Hello everyone out there, and welcome to my spoken word review of Elden Ring. I am Darkside Phil. I am someone who has history with From Software games. I have not necessarily loved them forever. I actually have grown to love the franchises that FromSoft comes out with. So when Elden Ring was announced that it was going to be a big open world game, but it was going to be the FromSoft formula, I was intrigued and very interested. Oh, shit! I was very interested to see how Elden Ring would turn out. And when I started playing the game, I realized that this was going to be a little bit different than someone just playing the game for themselves. And so when I played Elden Ring, instead of just playing it for myself to beat it, I realized, man, this game is something special. This is something that when I play it, I want to put an absolute honest effort into seeing all the content of the game in one playthrough. Most people have not done that. A 122-hour-long playthrough of Elden Ring. And I want to talk about it and review it for you, so that you can know what someone like me, who has history with FromSoft, but also has a different kind of perspective on games like this, thought about the overall experience. And I got a great club. So I got the Troll Club, and then I got a great club. I got two different clubs. The game also has a lot of different ways to play it. Whether it's a melee build, a magic build, a ranged build with, say, arrows and throwing daggers, a combination. This game has all different aspects from previous Dark Souls games. And what I mean by that is you can single wield, you can dual two-hand, you can dual wield weapons if you have the right stats to do it. All these weapons scale along with things that are very similar to the previous Dark Souls games, like faith, intelligence. Those are things from previous games that you've played from Software. So if you're someone coming in from having played previous From Software games like Dark Souls, you're going to feel right at home playing Elden Ring. This game basically has three different kinds of gameplay when it comes to dungeons. You've got the open world exploration, where you're going through various different maps and taking on different enemies in the open world, whether they be little normal enemies, kind of mid-boss enemies that are larger and have more of a health pool of HP, and sometimes random encounters of open world bosses. There's also what I would compare to the Chalice dungeons of Bloodborne. These are dungeons that are put into the game to be completely optional. You don't need to do them, and they don't necessarily have anything to do with the story of the game. But they are optional challenge dungeons of different varieties. Some look like a catacomb, some look like a cave, and a lot of the times you're reusing a lot of assets. The same type of enemies, the same type of walls, the same types of traps and tricks. It definitely needs to be said, these optional dungeons are incredibly repetitive, grindy, and boring, especially once you get to around the second half of the game. So it's kind of like, it's nice they're there. If you want to do them, great. But even me, after doing such a lengthy playthrough, found myself wanting to skip those dungeons by the end of the game because they didn't feel like they were adding anything to my playthrough, except every once in a while randomly running into a really good item. Then there's the Legacy Dungeons. And the Legacy Dungeons are, in my opinion, the best part of Elden Ring, because Legacy Dungeons in Elden Ring are equivalent to the actual standard dungeons of Dark Souls games. Whatever it is, it's going to be a typical Dark Souls dungeon where there's going to be a lot of exploration, a lot of enemies that are very cheap and can kill you with only a couple of hits, lurking around every corner. If you fully explore, you're going to find a lot of fun optional stuff, and a lot of the times there'll be optional bosses and optional ways to get around these stages. It's not necessarily a linear path to the end. When you get to the end, you will end up having a big boss fight. In some cases, some of these Legacy dungeons actually have multiple big boss fights. And one thing that I can absolutely tell you is one of the major improvements that Elden Ring did over previous FromSoft games. The platforming is dramatically improved. Actually trying to jump and land on a pinpoint spot is way easier in this game. The horse actually platforms really well, although every once in a while you may have a little bit of extra momentum and accidentally go further than you want, leading to a cheap death. Once you learn how exactly these controls work, the game is actually smooth. I have to say, like, I really enjoyed the platforming aspect of Elden Ring, and it was a humongous improvement over any other Dark Souls or any other game that I played from FromSoft. It really helped out a lot. Exploring this giant open world, trying to find all these hidden items and secrets, didn't feel like every single moment you took a jump, you were chancing losing all of your runes because you might slip and not land where you wanted to land. More times than not, I actually landed accurately, which was very surprising. You're going to find points of grace. Points of grace are equivalent to bonfires in Dark Souls. They're your resting spots, and they're where you do all kinds of things like leveling up, assigning all your inventory and your equipment load. But in some cases, they'll point you in a direction in the world, and when you're playing, admittedly, the first thing you think is, oh, they're telling me where to go. Wrong. Points of grace can literally point to anything in the game that's a point of interest. It might point you to one of the legacy dungeons. It could point you to a cave. It could point you to absolutely nothing. They really don't seem to have any bearing because they point all over the place. So following those initial points of grace, you immediately get confused, wondering where you're supposed to go in the game. And that seems to be the running thought of the game, is never to really be clear on what your objective is, where you're supposed to go, or what you're supposed to do. In the case of Elden Ring, it's very different. If you're going somewhere and you can't beat a certain boss or beat a certain dungeon, leave. Go do something else. There's another 100 other things to do in the game. That's one of the huge reasons why people have said that Elden Ring is the most accessible From Software game ever made. I can't see again. What happened? There's too much shit in front of the camera. At first, when you started with Elden Ring and you go into this open world, your eyes kind of go wide. You're like, whoa. Dark Souls never looked like this before, right? Dark Souls is always kind of linear when it comes to the way that the dungeons go. Although, admittedly, with Dark Souls, especially the first one and second one, there's a lot of open world aspect where you can do things in different order. Never before have you seen a vast open world like this. And immediately being thrown into this world, learning how to run and jump and do scaling and stuff that you really weren't able to do in previous games from FromSoft was pretty interesting. I like the graphics. I think that the gothic style of the game is really nice. It fits it perfectly. I wasn't looking for Horizon Forbidden West level graphics in this game because of what I knew it was going to entail. I absolutely love the visual appeal of the game. The lighting effects, the effects during fights, really neat. Although, admittedly, some of the boss fights have so many effects going on, you can't see what the hell's going on. You have to redo that boss a bunch of times to understand. But, man, it is visually appealing to me. It really looks cool. Wow! How am I going to get this? You can say, whoa, this game is confusing. I have no idea if I'm doing what I'm supposed to do to make progress. That happens all the time. One of my major criticisms of this game is the fact that From Software is starting a new IP, has opportunity to do things very differently, and they decided to go right down the path of all the previous games. I was expecting something different in Elden Ring, and quite frankly, I didn't really get it. All I got was Dark Souls 4. Now, by the way, I like that. I like Dark Souls. I was happy to play Dark Souls 4. But man, if you were looking for something different, original, or veering off the beaten path of what FromSoft has done before, you came to the wrong place. This game is absolutely Dark Souls 4 in all of its similarities. There's no way you can argue it. It's absolutely Dark Souls 4. There's no difference. It's bonfires. No. Oh, those are points of grace. Oh, you can dual wield. You can level it up with stats, just like Dark Souls. Those are runes you got. No, they're not. They're souls. It's exactly the same game engine. The other major big change, because you can jump now, jump attacks are ridiculously overpowered in this game. When you do a jump attack in this game, you dramatically increase the stun that you deal with that attack. Later on in the game, as you start to two-hand powerful weapons or even dual wield, you're basically doing 2 attacks in one with double stun. This attack can be abused, exploited, and completely dominates entire lengths of the game, including entire boss fights become actually afterthoughts because the jump attack dominates them so badly. Unresponsive controls are one of the most huge complaints that people have always levied against the From Software franchises. When you go to attack, there's a wind-up, a startup, before your guy will actually attack. When you go to roll, there's a delay before your character will roll. I don't know why From Software didn't take the opportunity to say, oh, new franchise, new rules, let's make our game more responsive. Because what I can definitively tell you, after playing this for 122 hours, is that some of these big enemies and boss fights would have been way better if you could actually immediately respond to what's going on the screen so you can react appropriately. What you're going to start to find around halfway through the game is that the game becomes incredibly repetitive, incredibly grindy, and because of that, kind of boring in the open world segments. For example, you'll notice the same enemy reused again and again and again and again and again and again. It really feels to me like the first half of the game, when you're first introduced to the open world stuff, oh, this is awesome. But as soon as you get to that second half of the game, man, it becomes a slog because you have to go through these open world areas and they're just not interesting anymore. You've seen most of what the game had to offer, and it doesn't toss enough variety at you. That if you actually actively try to do all the meaningful content in it, at one point you will be overpowered and will be steamrolling through certain areas of the game no matter what. It's actually impossible if you are just actively playing, killing the enemies, leveling up with the runes, and doing everything you would normally do in a FromSoft game, to not be over-leveled by about the time you hit the halfway point of the game. It really stands to reason that if you're someone who wants to enjoy this game all in one go, you can. You will get to points where the game becomes so impossibly over-the-top easy because you just chose to do all the content. And that's not acceptable. It's just not. It should be a game where if you do the content, you're rewarded, not you're actually feeling like sad that you did it. Jesus, look how long her arms are. They're like 14 feet long. In a nutshell, I feel like Elden Ring is a great game. However, I feel like it's a good first attempt at doing an open world game, and that FromSoft will likely do much better in the future. But this attempt is absolutely flawed. And the thing that really gets me is that since this game came out, there have been an overabundance of people who have reviewed this game and said it's a 10 out of 10. They'll be in their reviews criticizing the game, saying it has this thing that can be improved, and this thing that can be improved, and this thing that should be improved. 10 out of 10. I am absolutely positively never going to do something like that. That's completely dishonest. There are people out there who might have bought this game thinking it's like the best game ever. It's not. All right? In fact, here's what I can tell you, and I know a ridiculous amount of people will disagree with me on this point, but this is my personal opinion. You have a right to disagree with it. I do not believe this is the best game FromSoft ever made. I still, to this day, after now completing Elden Ring, I feel that Dark Souls 1 is still the best game in this vein from FromSoftware. For all of its great things that it does and its improvements to the franchise, I shouldn't be bored playing a game like this. And I was a lot playing Elden Ring. That's not good. There should not have been so much repetition and so much emptiness and so much boredom with the open world and reuse of enemies and assets that I felt like I had a whole stream that just didn't get anywhere and was a waste of my time. I don't ever feel like that when I play Dark Souls 1. I will say this. I think Elden Ring is the second best FromSoft game ever made. I actually think you got Dark Souls 1, and then you got Elden Ring. So, if that doesn't say that I like the game, I mean, I don't know what else does. It's my second favorite game these guys have ever made. It has a lot of content. Let me tell you, some of the bosses at the end of the game are really neat, unique, fun. The lore, oh god, the lore. It's confusing as shit, just like any other Dark Souls game, but at the very same time, Once you get into it and you start to research it and you're reading the item descriptions and you're trying to make ends meet, there's people putting family trees online of all the characters in the game. Oh my god, it's deep lore, it's interesting, it's fun. I like that about these games that FromSoft puts out. I really do. And this game absolutely excelled at that. I had a ton of fun playing Elden Ring, but I shouldn't be bored with a game that's supposed to be constantly challenging me and constantly risking death, and this game absolutely bored me to tears in certain parts. People keep kissing FromSoft's butt way too much. Don't let the fanboys outright telling you the game's perfect make you think it is. It's not. There's no way you can objectively say this game is perfect. It's got flaws. It's got glitches. It's got issues with pacing. It's got issues with balance. And anyone who plays the game will admit it, but if they tell you the game's perfect, they're outright lying. Got her. Bye-bye.